Hello, church. It's Pastor Ben. Hope you're all having a great week. This week we had something a little different. We had a guest speaker from the Cedar Valley Angels, and he shared his information about what they do with foster children in regards to helping families and helping individual situations in one-on-one settings. I went ahead and recorded that, and it's going to take the place of our sermon video today. So go ahead and check that out. I also have included a link for the organization in the description below the video. This is a great organization, my friends. They do a lot of good work, so I hope you can support them. Have a great week, and we'll be back here next week. Bye bye.
Is the same one that the church I grew up in used. But we had an old brown hymnal. And I don't know if your church is like the one I grew up in, but you sing a lot of the same ones over and over, and you get to memorize the numbers. And so and I was a high school math teacher for 8 years of my career, so numbers make a lot of sense to me. So I still have probably 20 of those hymnal numbers in my head. And so when you say, hey, we're going to sing this, the last one that we just sang, it's like, that's not 447. That's the wrong number. So kind of a little blast from the past there. Well, I'm Derek. I'm thankful to be here, thankful to be getting to do some things in person. I don't get an opportunity to talk to folks as often as I would like, but I'm hoping that tide is changing a little bit. So I will, I've got a clock right here in front of me. I will be mindful of it, but I have a lot of words, and I've been cooped up for a year. So I'll try and be mindful of that. Well, I'm from Jessup. Don't hold it against me. That's where I grew up. That's where I graduated high school. I went to the University of Northern Iowa. I taught high school math for 8 years, 3 of those years at East High School in Waterloo and 5 in Hudson. So I'm just up the road here. And during that time, my wife and I became passionate about adoption. So we, in 2011, actually our path led us to Uganda. So we went over to Uganda and adopted 2 kids from Uganda that happened in 2012 when we finished that. And then shortly thereafter, we were a little bit afraid of the foster care system. There's a lot of just negative talk around kids in the foster care system, and we're afraid to do that. But we did feel the Lord kind of leading us that direction, and so we decided to get our foster license. And in the process of getting our foster license, we became aware of a woman in Waterloo who was going to be giving birth to, I think it was her 6th child in 7 years, and just a really low income, just a really hard scenario. And she was going to be giving that baby up for adoption. And so we came to our foster class with all these other people who were getting licensed to do foster care, who want to take care of children. And we were like, hey, we just adopted 2 kids 2 years ago. But certainly somebody here will be interested. Nobody was interested, and so I turned to my wife and said, I wonder if we're supposed to adopt again. And we, we'd just gone on a 3-month international trip, and I was a high school math teacher. My wife was staying home, so we did not have all the money in the world, and this was it was a bit of a, I don't want to say we were testing the Lord, but kind of. And I said, well, we can't afford anything over this amount of money. This is a private adoption, and those can be expensive sometimes. So the Lord must have heard my challenge and said, well, I'll meet you there. So we ended up adopting this little girl as well. So 3 kids in 3 years to kick things off to start the Kimball family. That was back in 2012 through 2014 time frame. So our heart was kind of growing for just kids from hard places, kids that have baggage, trauma, and just really unfortunate circumstances. And so we got our foster license shortly after that and began fostering. And what we found in the world of foster care was a lot of what we'd been hearing, but then we started to experience it in our own house. And that was kids come in having experienced just horrible things, having been separated from mom and dad or grandma or grandpa or whoever it is that they were living with. And even if the situation wasn't very good, that was all they knew. Those were the people that they were most connected to. And so kids come into foster homes just very disoriented, not knowing the same set of rules or culture or church or school or really anything about how to behave, how to get along in a foster home. They have a lot to learn, and because they are often pretty scared kids, they take a lot of patience. They take a lot of repetition, and they just need a lot of attention. So the first kids we had in our home that were in foster care were 3 and 2 years old. We're a set of siblings, a brother and sister. So they were 3 and 2. And my kids were 3, 8, and 9. So we had 9, 8, 3, 3, and 2. So that's 3 in car seats, 5 kids total. And we got these 2 kids on New Year's Eve of that year. Of course, there were very few homes open to taking kids on New Year's Eve. But when kids get removed, they got to go somewhere. And unfortunately, because we don't have a lot of foster homes available. We have way more kids that need a home than we have homes for them to go to. We were like the last call on the list, and they would have gone to a shelter, if not to us. So we took them, and we did not know the extent of their trauma. It was pretty bad. We would learn over the next several months, and taking those 2 kids really opened our eyes. It didn't feel like we had 5, it felt like we had 10 kids. Those kids, they just had a lot of needs. I keep looking over at you guys because you've got your kids that you describe as blessings here. I'm sure my mom would say the same thing about me, I hope. And they ask the same questions 14 times, right? And they when are we doing this? When are we going to grandma's? When are we? And this was like every turn. I was so amazed, this 3-year-old that we had versus my 3-year-old, and just the difference in their sense of security that they felt. My 3-year-old would jump off the couch and expect me to catch her. She would not, knew that I would provide for her needs, that she was safe in our home. But this other 3-year-old was somewhat what we call in the foster world, somewhat parentified almost, like already so aware of her own needs, and that she may have to be the one to meet her own needs. And so she would always inquire the next meal. When are we going to eat? When are we going to eat? Where can I go do this? Or I can remember we would pull out of the driveway, and we usually go the same direction, but if you would go down the road and turn left instead of right, it'd be like, Derek, where are we going? Where are we going? And she'd grip her car seat. Where are we going? I don't recognize this. And I would say, it's okay. It's okay. We're just going here instead of here. And it just was constant fear was what I would see in her eyes. I had a reason to be out of town, and my wife was home with the 5 kids, which was difficult. And she was about 2.5 hours into trying to get bedtime done one night. Again, this child had some trauma around bedtime, and she was 2.5 hours into this, and just could not get this little girl to calm down enough to go to sleep. And she told me the next day when I called and checked in that she went out into the hallway, leaned against the wall, and just slumped to the floor and just cried because this girl just needed so much from us. And I'm not a naturally very patient parent. I think it's that that logic brain, the math teacher, right? Like A plus B is C, so why aren't you going to sleep yet? What's the problem here? And sometimes that results in a lack of patience that I have. And she slumped to the floor and just, had it. She just could not do anything else in that moment, and didn't, of course, want to lose her patience on this little girl that just didn't know any better, and so she just had to go take a moment out in the hallway. And we were fortunate at the time. I was helping with some college ministry stuff at the University of Northern Iowa, and we had a couple of college students also living with us. So if you're keeping track, that's 9 people in one house. So quite a lot. And one of the college students came upstairs, and she took a turn. She went into the bedroom and, sang a song to this little girl, and, took a turn trying to help. And that's what my wife needed in that moment. I wasn't there. And that was really when I started to really think, man, I hear these stories from foster parents, and now we're living in our own house. And I'm from the area. I'm from Jessup. I went to the UNI. I have friends and family in the area, but they're not always there at a moment's notice, and sometimes it's hard to ask for help. I don't know if it's a Midwest thing, an Iowa thing, but it's kind of a get her done, do it yourself. That sometimes we can do that to our own detriment, I think. And so we just were overwhelmed. A lot of the families we knew were overwhelmed. There are probably, like I said earlier, 2 or 3 times as many kids in foster care in the area as there are homes for them to go to. And most families aren't taking 3 or 4 kids. They're taking maybe 1, or they're in between taking kids and they don't have any. And so a lot of kids are having to leave the area if they get put in foster care, and go live 2, 3, 4 hours away in another state sometimes. Just really hard situations. And the data, again, math teacher, so I'm sorry. The data bears that out. Nationally, only about half of kids in foster care graduate from high school, which, even having the supports that they attempt to put in place, only half are graduating from high school. Here locally, about half of kids who age out of foster care, meaning that they weren't adopted, will spend time in jail or prison. And a whole kind of host of statistics, of which children in foster care are the top of the list for being the most vulnerable for these, going to prison, trafficking, drugs, all the really kind of hard statistics that you read about. And it's just because we don't have enough families, we don't have enough people pouring into these kids, especially when they're little, but also when they're teenagers as well. We just don't have enough. And me, I saw this, and I was connected to the church, and I thought, it seems silly to me that there's no way for the community to jump in and help with these families who are doing foster care. There's no one doing anything. The only way to help is to be a licensed foster parent, which of course is not everybody's call. That's a whole lifestyle change in order, to take in kids and parent them and raise them as your own is a huge commitment. It's like one of the biggest commitments we've ever made. And it's, takes a lot out of you. It's, you got to put vacation on hold. You have to maybe think about not doing that thing at work or that thing at church, or it's like your all of your free time wrapped up into that one decision, and all of your extra emotional energy also wrapped up into that one decision. So it's a big deal. And I thought it's really just kind of insane to me. There's no way for the community to jump in and help with this. There ought to be a program for people in the community to say, hey, I want to sign up to walk alongside a foster family. I want to come over and kick the soccer ball around with Johnny, or pick him up from soccer practice, or drop off a meal, or run to Walmart when they get a placement in their home at 10 o'clock at night that comes with no shoes on. That kid has to go to daycare the next morning, and I have to go to work, and I can't go to Walmart. Somebody's got to be there to help me. To me, it seemed silly that there was no way for just practical things to be done by the community who would help, because we live in an area where people are generous, but there's just no link for them to get involved. And so we started dreaming and scheming, my wife and I, about doing that. We were just gonna maybe just kind of talk to some of our friends and say, hey, would you help other families that we know? to have a hot meal or to run to the store or pick up Johnny from soccer or any of those kind of things that just sometimes families need more people around. And, well, we came across an organization out of Austin, Texas called Austin Angels, who was already doing that, but they were a full-blown nonprofit organization. They had staff, and they had developed these 2 programs that people could do exactly what it was that we were trying to do. So actually my wife called down there and said, hey, tell me more about this. They liked us pretty well and said, hey, you should launch a chapter of our organization in the Cedar Valley. So that was a thing that originally I said no to, because I didn't have any clue what it meant to launch an organization. I'd seen my folks give money to the church, but I didn't even know that nonprofit organizations could that they weren't just entirely volunteer. People could do this for a living and actually help with the societal problems that we have. So I just had no idea. So I said no, but a seed was planted, and about a year later we did launch Cedar Valley Angels, and I left my job teaching and started working on that full time, and we now have been able to hire a few people to walk alongside families, help recruit volunteers, and just do kind of a lot of the work that we're doing in the foster community in the area. So kind of bringing up to speed here today, we have about 25 foster homes that we're working with at the moment, most of them in Blackhawk County. We do have one family over in Traer that we work with who does foster care, and then also over in LaPorte. So a little bit down this way, but not maybe as many at the moment. But we're starting to receive more kind of requests for that. I was saying to Ben before we got going here that we have those 25 homes that we're working on, but because of COVID now, I think becoming a little less. Oh, I don't know. It's getting a little better. It seems like the reports that you were saying, CDC and other places are hopefully trending in the right direction. The weather is warming up. People can be outside. We have 15 foster families on our wait list now to get into the program, but we have no volunteer groups to match them with. And that just kind of happened all of a sudden. DHS and other child welfare organizations have been sending us a lot of families that need support, and we just, the volunteer groups have just not caught up yet. We haven't been able to recruit too many in recent months. And it's kind of the same deal on the fundraising front, is I don't get a lot of opportunities to speak to people during COVID, and it's just kind of a quiet season there. And so really on the volunteer and the fundraising side, we're just in need right now, where we have almost as many kids on our wait list to get into the programs that we have as we do kids in the program already. So we're hoping that over the next couple of months we can change that narrative and get some folks to sign up for those programs. So I'll tell you a little bit more about programs and then an event actually that we have going on later today. If any of you are free to attend, that would be awesome. So our 2 programs are this: the Love Box program, which is kind of what I already described. This is where a group of people, this could be a family, small group, work group, any group of people that want to get together and kind of sponsor a foster family. Where in this group, they decide, hey, monthly we are going to do at least something. We're going to do 1 or 2 things throughout the month where we're going to get together, we're going to share a meal. I'm going to cook it at my house and invite them over to run around in the backyard or whatever else. Meet at the park, go up to the falls, if that's open this summer. I guess I don't know if it will be. And just do something together. Because a lot of times families, especially foster parents, especially foster moms, a lot of them stay home and all they hear are kids' voices all day long, and they just need some adult interaction, right? Sometimes that's the end of the day. It's like, oh, it's so nice to just talk to her. I keep looking over at her. Yeah. Sometimes I'm sure she's saying that same thing. And that's just huge for our families, just to know that somebody is there. I get phone calls from foster moms, especially, where they're crying to me on the phone. And I assume something terrible has happened or something really good has happened, and The reason they're crying is because their Love Box volunteer brought them coffee on Saturday morning and chit-chatted on the porch for an hour. And that just meant so much to them. Somebody would take an hour out of their day and spend $3 at the gas station picking them up a coffee. It's the thought, right? It's the fact that somebody showed up and is taking time to think about you and pour into you that is sometimes, bigger than anything else you could do. And I think that's the community that we're driving at, that we're trying to create for these families, is to really wrap a village of support around their families so that they can be sustained. In the foster care system, the average foster family only lasts a year before they quit. And as you know, I don't know how many of you are parents, but how good parenting do you get in the first year versus the years after that? You learn a lot, right, over the years of parenting kiddos. And so having foster parents who do it year after year after year is a huge asset to kids that are going into foster care. But if they burn out, then we got to start over. And so supporting the parents that we have is one of our goals, and keeping kids in homes that they go into is one of our goals. It's pretty typical that kids bounce around from foster home to foster home for things like I mentioned, the story I told earlier, where we have, where it's difficult, we feel overwhelmed, and so we call DHS and say, you're gonna have to come take this kid, I can't handle this. Well, can you imagine a child who has had some kind of abuse happen to them? So then they were removed from their family of origin, then they came to my house, they were there 6 months, I got overwhelmed, they were just starting to feel like, I know the rules of this house and I know the routines, and now they go and get ripped from that house and put in another home, and kids can't make progress that way. They need that stability, that security, that consistency. So that's really what we're trying to do, is we're trying to get the community, people who aren't fostering and don't feel called to foster, to say, but I could, like, once or twice a month host a meal or volunteer babysit, have those kids over, even though it's going to be a wild, crazy time for the 2 hours you have them over. It's still going to be so nice for that foster family to be able to get a little break. We have a family that we onboarded recently that lives in, I think they live in Waterloo, it might be Evansdale. They have 6 kids, some biological children, I think 2 adopted and 2 in foster care. It's a mix. And foster mom was telling me that she hadn't been away from all 6 kids for 5 years. Like, there'd never been an overnight, with her girlfriends or with her husband, that she just could not leave them because they just require too much. One babysitter, even 2 babysitters was maybe not going to be enough for the kids that she had in her home. And so she hadn't really been away from all 6 at one time in 5 years. So we got hooked up with a group of retired teachers up in the Waterloo, Cedar Falls area, and they wanted to make a group. We put those 2 people together, that group of teachers and this family, and a month or 2 later, the group of retired teachers, 3 or 4 of them, went over to the house and sent mom and dad over to Whiskey Road in Cedar Falls for the first time in 5 years. They got to go on a date night with no kids, which if you take kids to a restaurant, man, that's a gamble all by itself, right? Goodness, what are they going to do? And she just cried about it. She just felt like so supported by this group of teachers that would, volunteer their time to come once or twice a month. And so they just got to get along so well. One of them she loves to bake, loves to cook. And so I think that family gets a weekly meal where she just is like, hey, I'm making spaghetti. I'm going to throw in a bunch extra. Can I bring it over? And foster mom is like, absolutely, you can bring it over. I would be thrilled to not have to cook tonight. And so they just take such good care of this family. And it's really, really been a neat, it's really been what we envision the program being, is these families that just feel new life breathed into them to be able to take care of the kids that they have in their home. And it doesn't alleviate all the problems, but it sure makes it a whole lot more doable to get up in the morning and know, hey, this person's going to be helping me today. If you're interested in hearing more about that story particularly, we happen to have done recently a little interview with this family that we recorded and kind of put together, and it's going to be coming out in our newsletter and in our on Facebook this week. So if you're in those places and want to look up Cedar Valley Angels, you'll be able to watch that interview with that foster mom, and it's a moving story. It really is what our foster parents feel when these families or when these groups come alongside them and support them. So the Love Box program is that. The Dare to Dream program we've just started. It's one-on-one mentorship. It's a pretty simple model, but with a lot of training around the ideas of trauma for those mentors. We know that kids age out of foster care have very, very low outcomes. They just don't have a lot of success. You know, I came from a good home, and I had two parents that loved me, and they helped me pay for college and gave me a car when I was 16, and I was still an idiot when I moved out. Like, I still did dumb stuff. Ben's like, oh yeah, I know about that. You know, I still did dumb stuff because you're just learning, right? And I came from a stable home. I grew up in the same house all 18 years before I left. And I still did dumb stuff. I still didn't know what to do here or there, or skipped class, or didn't go to work, or, got in a car accident. And, you just do stuff when you're coming of age. And kids that don't have any kind of relational permanency in their lives, who turn 18 and age out of foster care, and they leave the foster home that they were in with no adult in the community that is helping guide them, keeping them on the kind of between the rails a little bit, it's just difficult to have any success. 3% of kids in foster care that age out of foster care, 3% will graduate from college. And that's 2-year, 4-year, any kind of college. 3%. And as you may imagine, there's tons of scholarships for kids in foster care, to age out of foster care. So it's not really a financial issue. It's not that they can't afford it. It's that they have no one helping them to figure out where to go or what to do. And there's too much instability, and there's just not enough guidance there for those kids to feel like they can figure it out. 3%. But kids that have a mentor, that have somebody to call, or somebody even just text them and say, how'd your test go? That's a little bit of accountability that a lot of kids that age just need that, right? They need to know that their mom and dad or their mentor or somebody is checking in on them, like, well, I better study for this test because I know Derek is going to ask me about it, and I don't want to have to tell him that I didn't study it. And, kids need that, even at 18 years old. And so that is kind of what we envision for the mentorship program is the kids that age out of foster care, meaning they turn 18, they haven't been adopted, they really have no home, unless that foster family that had them prior decides to let them stay, which does happen sometimes. That they have somebody in the community that's been walking alongside them for a few years prior to 18 years old that they can call, that they can maybe come crash on the couch when they're in between leases, that they have somewhere to go for Thanksgiving or Christmas, and they're not just kind of on their own, feeling sad about having no family to go back to. That is, when rubber meets the road, that's where it really gets real. A couple years ago, we took in a 16-year-old kid in our house, and my wife and I had kind of decided we were just gonna take younger kids. But I happened to know this kid through Cedar Valley Angels. He was in a family that we were working with, really good kid, and when he came to us, we decided to take him in because I kind of already knew him and knew he was a good kid, just trying to figure everything out. When he came to us and he started talking to us, he told me he'd been in 6 places in the last 2 years, including 2 homeless shelters. And this is a good kid. You meet him and be like, there's no way this kid is in foster care. He's like smooth and, you know, funny and does pretty good. He had a 3.0 GPA in school, and it was like, how is this kid in a homeless shelter? How is there nowhere for this kid to go, or nowhere for him to go? You know, and as we had him longer and longer, we learned of some hard things he'd been through, and, you know, kind of got to where he wasn't a good fit in our home anymore after about 10 months of him being with us. But because of Cedar Valley Angels, we were able to keep him in the same school, in the same community. We knew another foster family. We hooked them up with some support through Cedar Valley Angels, and we were able to keep him in the community. He's now been in the Cedar Falls schools for 3 years. He's graduating here in a couple weeks. He's enrolled at Hawkeye. His foster parents are going to continue to work with him. The foster parents' mom and dad kind of pour into him a lot. We were able to get him a car, a license. I mean, he's really got all the things he needs, but that wouldn't have happened without this community of support kind of focused on his success, rallying around him. And, you know, will he do some dumb things in the next 6 months when he moves out? You betcha. He will. But he's got people to help him. He's got people that are here locally. He's got me. He's got his foster parents, grandparents, and really a whole network of people in the area. But that doesn't happen unless people pour in intentionally. So that's kind of what we envision for Cedar Valley Angels, is to really change the narrative of what it means to be impacted by the foster care system in the Cedar Valley. You know, you look up any statistics, local, statewide, national, there's never enough homes. They're not successful. The system as it stands at the moment is really just kind of getting kids to 18 years old, keeping them sort of safe, and then after 18, it really, you know, like I said, where the rubber meets the road, and kids start to see like, wow, these kids are not prepared to be able to go be adults in our society. So that's my heartbeat. That's my just passion, is to see kids have better outcomes. And I think that there are people in the community who want to pour in and help. We just have to find those people and draw those bridges between families and volunteers in the community that don't feel called to foster, but maybe could do something. So, Love Box program, Dare to Dream program, those are huge for us right now. Like I said, we have tons of families on the wait list. We even have one that's within about 10 minutes of here. Family of 7, I think, 7. Parents are pretty young. Sounds like they're stretched pretty thin right now. And that could be maybe something that, I don't know if anybody here would be interested, but we like to match people with people from their community. You know, there are kids in the same schools and in the same community. That's a huge asset, to be able to know folks in the community that you can call and that want to help out. So that's what we have. The only other thing I'll say is later today, we have a little event in Hudson, just up the road. If any of you have ever heard of, there's a little shop in Hudson called Well and Far Designs. And Well and Far Designs, it's a woman that makes shirts and coffee mugs and things like that, and she sells them and then donates proceeds to organizations helping kids, mostly adoptions and organizations like us. So she organized this event where there are 3 or 4 food trucks that are going to come to this event. They're blocking off part of a street. There's a little guy on a guitar that's going to be playing. It's kind of almost like a little small town carnival festival. I don't know what like LaPorte or Traer has for the, you know, we in Jessup we call it Farmers Days. That's what's you know what I'm talking about, yeah. That, but a little smaller, 1 block. So come get a sandwich, hear about Cedar Valley Angels a little bit more, sign up to volunteer, listen to the guy on the guitar, maybe buy a t-shirt while you're there. Should be a fun little outing, assuming that we can hold the rain at bay. Even though I know we like the rain, farmers, yeah, right. I think that's the end of my spiel. I'm at 34 minutes, Ben. Any burning questions? It's a small enough group. I could take questions. Okay, well, I left some brochures and my card on the back table there. I don't know if that was what that was for, Ben, but that's what I did. So you can move them if you need to. And again, I appreciate your listening ears today.